So autism and ADHD together, combined, this is kind of like the lazy guide to understanding all of that, and we're covering it all right now, so don't go anywhere. So what is autism and ADHD? Why is it related? Well, the funny thing is, these two are kind of like these intertwining neurological conditions. So my name is Dan, and I have autism and ADHD together. So this is coming from my background of like understanding it from how I see it, how I experience it, and what it feels like to have this kind of ADHD versus autism kind of polarity, right? Because they are two kind of diagnosed separately conditions, but also they are comorbid or co-occurring conditions, which means that they can be present in somebody together or separately. Now, in terms of ADHD, it stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, right? Now, a lot of people think that that means you must be like hyperactive all the time. Okay, so let's just dial it back a little bit. So I am hyperactive most of the time. I would love for you to leave a review for this video / podcast if you have anything to add, because it would really help me out on this channel and also help me learn and grow from your comments. And I am a very kind of switching from this task to that task type of person. I think it's kind of like within my nature, it's within my, who I am. And, part of that is due to the fact that I have ADHD. Now, I was diagnosed with ADHD and Asperger's syndrome, which is now just autism spectrum disorder, together the same day, at the same time. They're like, well, yeah, this is blatantly obvious. You have both of these conditions. But it's not always obvious in different types of people. And I'm going to get into why that is right now. But if you're interested in this type of content, I make weekly videos just like this. So remember to hit the subscribe button down below if you want to help support and follow on with more videos like this. So in terms of ADHD, a lot of girls on the autism spectrum are first diagnosed with ADHD. And this is because a lot of the people who are assessing the autism, assessments, they are looking at a lot of literature and research that was originally done by like Hans Asperger and Leo Kenner that was all to do with males or, the males on the spectrum. And so a lot of that doesn't really apply to females. So they sit there and they're like, oh, Miss blah, blah, we're going to go through this now and have a look. Oh, yes, it looks like, you have some traits that look autistic, but they're behaving in a different way. It must be ADHD. Now, that happens quite often. Or the other one, which is kind of like the more common one, and I find this so much. I think it's rare that I find somebody who's an autistic female who hasn't been pre-diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I find this fascinates the heck out of me. Because it's not bipolar, it's just emotional deregulation because of autism. But because of the lack of data on women, this is kind of missed out, right? So ADHD is almost like an urge for your body, your brain, your mind to switch tasks constantly. And this means that you could be hyperactive, like myself, because I talk really fast. And by the way, guys, I'm really sorry if I'm talking really fast. It's just something that happens. I document this in my book. I talk about it quite a bit. And if you haven't seen my book, it's called Autism for Adults. You can get it on Amazon or anywhere. Or you can go to autismforadults.com right now. And I talk about how I have hyperactivity and it makes my voice, my speech really fast. And it's partly to do with the fact that I have ADHD and partly to do with the fact that my brain is going a very fast pace because I'm autistic. And I'm trying to process things at a rapid rate, right? This is what autistic individuals do. FYI, if you are relating to this and your brain goes really, really fast and you speak fast, give this video a thumbs up. I'd love to know who's listening in to figure out what's going on. Not everybody will have hyperactivity and fast speech with ADHD. A lot of the time, it will be more of like an internal kind of hyperactivity where your brain is switching between different tasks all the time. So you're finding it extremely difficult to concentrate on a specific single task, not because you're kind of getting up and walking around. Typically, that's what I did. But it's because your brain is also jumping from thing to thing. Now, this happens, I'd say it's like 50-50. You'll get people with ADHD and then, who will want to, jump around like me. I can't sit down, still for a long time. I have to get up and move around. And then you'll get people who have ADHD who are just kind of like really bad at focusing on the tasks and they can't really get the tasks. Even though they're sitting still and they're trying their best to sit down and do this focused task, it's just not happening. And it's really funny because a lot of people think that because you don't have that hyperactivity, like of getting up and walking around and being kind of like impulsive, then you don't really have ADHD. Now, what's really funny about ADHD is that years ago, there used to be two forms. You used to have ADD and then ADHD, and ADD, attention deficit disorder. They just dropped the hyperactivity because they thought, well, these people aren't displaying hyperactive tendencies or hyperactive traits, like I just said, like me getting up and sitting, I can't sit down, I have to move around. And then people were like, well, no, it's still, they're still hyperactive people, but it's just the way their brain is going with it. It's like they're switching from task to task to task, which I find just absolutely fascinating. So if you are struggling and you're looking for a therapist, we actually have on-hand autistic and neurodivergent therapist here at TheAspieWorld. Now, if you're looking for coaching and therapy combined together with a therapist, Carla, who works here at TheAspieWorld, who is ADHD and is a registered therapist, will do online sessions with you. All you have to do is follow the link down below or go to theaspieworld.com/Carla with a K and book an appointment with Carla. All right, guys. That being said, I do also recognize that autism and ADHD get diagnosed quite often together because they kind of play off each other a little bit. And this is what I mean. So I had this, I'll give you an example, okay? So I am an author, like I told you. I've got a book out called Autism for Adults. You can get it now for autismforadults.com. And this book, to me, was kind of a really interesting moment in the way that my autistic brain and my ADHD brain kind of like fused together and was like trying to battle it out. And it was kind of like Superman versus Batman kind of thing, because they're both superior in the way that they control like my thoughts and mind and all that kind of stuff. But also, they were kind of like just cancelling each other out constantly. So my publisher said, Dan, sit down and write a book. We're going to do a book. I said, yeah, great. Doing a book is great because it brings, a lot more education to the world. More people have access to information to help change lives, because we're all about changing lives here. My motto is, making autism life less lonely, right? It's because like autistic people are lonely. So I thought if I make a book and I get people together and they can talk and they converse. And so I was like, okay, I'll sit down and write a book. So my autistic brain is like, I want to really sit down and hyper focus on this task. And this task is writing a book. So I sit down at my desk, and then I realize I can't really sit still for longer than a few minutes. I want to get up and I want to kind of like doom scroll on Facebook, or I'm going to walk around or do something, ridiculous. And then it's like, oh, damn, I can't do this. So I was like, well, how am I supposed to write a book? And then I realized something really interesting. Because of the way my brain works, because it's hyperactive, but it's also wanting to hyper-focus on things, I had a little workaround. So I like running, so I run quite often. So I try to run every day, but I run probably like about 4 times a week. And when I'm running, I'm listening to audiobooks because I love books, but I find reading really difficult because I'm also dyslexic. So the only way that I can actually, digest a book and actually get that information into my body is by running, because of 2 things. One, it's audibly being fed into my system. And the second thing is that because I'm hitting the floor and I'm getting tactile feedback, I'm kind of remembering those things. So then I was like, this is really interesting. I wonder if it would work the other way around. What if I could write a book this way? Like running, but writing a book. But I couldn't physically like, okay, let's go. I'm going to write a book now. Like, running with my notepad. Would never going to happen. So then I was like, how am I going to do this? So really simple. I got my iPhone, and then I was like talking to my iPhone whilst I was running outside. But it was the middle of November, and it was raining and windy, and it wasn't happening, right? So I was like, dang it. So then I transposed that. I came inside and I got a treadmill in my garage because we turned the garage into a gym. So I realized that I could run on the treadmill and talk to my phone. So I did 8 sessions of running for 1 hour, talking to my phone for 8 days in a row. And the entire book was written. So that was a way in which I needed to create hyper-focus through creating the book, like thinking about doing the book, but also keeping my ADHD mind actively occupied, because my ADHD brain wanted me to run and be scatty and all over the place, and it didn't want me to sit down. It wanted me to be running, be active, be stood up, do something other than sit down and write a book, right? But I needed to kind of like calm it. Now, this is another way which I help do this. You're wanting to learn something, you need to sit down and watch a documentary, or you need to sit down and watch a lecture. Having like fidget toys to play with keeps your kind of ADHD brain activated and engaged. Or you can have like an under the desk cycle thing where you can cycle your legs underneath your desk. That works really, really well. And I helped a lot of people during the COVID times of distance learning figure that out and have those types of things implemented. But autism and ADHD, they sometimes do work together in an interesting way where you can hyper-focus on something, but then you can also obsess on a special interest. And that interest then can become something like your career, or something where you are so taken by it that you just have like the best joyous time in the world, because like you surround yourself with the things that you enjoy and that you love and you can learn from, which I think is absolutely amazing. But ADHD and autism most often are comorbidly co-occurring, diagnosed together. And I do truly believe ADHD and autism are kind of part and parcel. I think like they come together, and that's just my personal opinion. I'm going to do a video just all about that and my theory on it. But for this video specifically, I just wanted to do a bit more of a guide. Now, ADHD, the hyperactivity, the attention issues, and lack of focus is what really impacts the brain with an ADHD person. Autism, on the other hand, is more of a communication issue and a hyperfocus, hyperfixation, and rigid structure for routine. Now, those two things are separate, and they sound really interesting, but you can see how they can clash and butt heads, right? Like I said about the whole Superman versus Batman thing, because they both have their individual tendencies, but they don't work well together. And I think this causes the biggest pain in my life, especially when I chuck OCD into the mix, because I also have OCD, and it's just probably one of the most debilitating things ever. And actually, if anyone asks me, like, what's the biggest issue you find with autism, I have to say it's OCD. Hey guys, I just want to quickly ingest here that if you're looking to super up your autistic traits and use them to your advantage, I actually have a specific program online course that's really easy to digest, super simple to get, and you can get it right now. The link is in the description of this video and in my bio, that you can just go to www.learnautism.net/super, and you can learn how you can supercharge and make those traits into superpowers right now. So go check it out. It's really, really good.